It's time to walk through how to install FreeBSD. This video focuses on installing it the simple way. When I say simple way, I refer to that we will install it with auto partitioning. This will do in most cases, of course, because then we will use the entire disk. More of that later. I'm going to boot the CD drive, which has the image for the FreeBSD. In case you don't want to wait out the timer, you can just press return there. So what's happening now is that we are booting up our image. This is run through a virtual machine, so it's getting the data from an ISO that is mounted, just like the VirtualBox. And this is what I believe you also see when you try to install it. To start with, a warning. If you install this on a real computer, you will of course lose all the data on that hard disk drive that you're installing it on. So be careful. I recommend that first time and experimenting virtual machines like VirtualBox is a really good approach. In the installation menu, if you want to install FreeBSD, you have to select the first option, Install. You navigate with the arrow keys, of course, and you press return when you want to apply something, like to press the install button there, and you use space to mark things with. So we need to select our key map for the keyboard. In my case, it's the Swedish keyboard. Swedish there. Once I select it, I can either test the key map or I can continue. You select there if you want to test it, or you go one step up to continue with the keyboard map. I'm going to choose a host name for this machine. The host name can be whatever you want, of course. I'm going to call it freebsd.local. Or we can call it, for example, myserver.local. And I continue here. The distribution set. Here you can select if you want to have additional documentation, games, the ports tree, or the system source code. I would recommend that you select at least system source code. Can be good if you want to compile the entire kernel. Ports, we will install that later, so we can deselect that. And as I said before, you navigate with the arrow keys and you press space just to unselect or select. So we'll unselect ports, games, take them if you want, I unselect them. And then I press OK to continue. Here is the partitioning stage we arrived to. Partitioning is when we put logical drives on our hard disk drive, we can say it like that, or we make logical ports of it. Portions. And then you can either go manual or auto. I'm going to select auto to take the Unix file system, because that's what this tutorial is about, to make it as simple as possible. So I select this one. To make it very simple, I can take the entire disk instead of partitioning it. Here it says that would you like to use the entire disk DA0 for FreeBSD, and this is on a virtual machine, so I cannot so this will be on the virtual machine that this happens. So be careful. If you run real hardware, then you will wipe the entire hard disk drive, and be very careful so you don't ruin anything when you use real computers. And I'm going to select the entire disk in this case, and it warns here also that this will erase the disk. Are you sure you want to proceed? In my case, I want to do that. This is how it looks like. If you look at the hard disk there, you can see DA0 is the hard disk drive in FreeBSD. This is the first hard disk drive. If you had two, that would be DA0 as the first one, DA1 as the second one, DA2 as the third one. When it's this is how the partitioning will be laid out, and we will make a manual partition in the next video. But bear in mind that this is a GPT, the partition scheme, And here you have the boot sector, 512 kilobyte. And then we have the rest of the drive, which is on the root. You can see that that's the root mount point. And you see that we have 90 gigabyte of that, and swap is 1 gigabyte. There are some people say that when you use swap, you should put equal swap as there is a RAM memory. Some say twice. So that's it's really hard to know exactly which one to take, but I always stick with the same amount and some more megabytes extra than the RAM memory that you have on your computer. So if you have 4 gigabyte RAM, I would take 4 gigabyte plus a few megabyte extra then, in case it needs to make a kernel dump, like a kernel panic, and needs to make a dump there. Alright, so if you're satisfied with this, you can take finish here. So this is what the system has recommended, that it should be partitioned like this. Remember that the data will be lost now when you continue, so be careful. Then you commit. This is the final warning here, so it's going to, when you press commit, it will erase the disk and begin to install after it's erased. So I'm sure of it, so I continue with commit in my case. So what will happen is that it will install the system, and in few moments it will ask us a couple of questions. I'm going to pause the video while it's installed, and I will resume when the first question arrives. So now we arrived to the first question here, and it's to set the password on the account root. In case you don't have been using the Unix-like operating system before, I can inform that the root account is the user account that you can log in with, that has most power of the system, of course. It's like an administrator, I would explain it like. So I'm going to put the password on this one by typing it and press return. And the next question that we are arriving to after we've been setting the password is to configure the network card. This is the first network card, which is named EM0. I'm going to select OK to take this card. I would like to configure IPv4 on this one, so I select yes. As I told you, that in this installation, I assume that you have your machine, the host is on a network where you have the dynamic host configuration protocol, which is the DHCP. This means that you have a router that shares the, for example, it could be a router that when the computer wants an IP address, it leases an IP address to the computer, which is temporary. On a server, you won't have a static IP, so it remains all the time the same IP, but when we are just making a simple installation, we can stick with the DHCP as the first option and change it to a static later if you want. So then we select yes here. And it's trying to acquire a lease here. And then it's asking if I want to make an IPv6 configuration of this protocol then. For the protocol for that interface, and I really don't need that, so I can select no. Now it have the DNS server already filled up here. If you want to change them, you can simply change them. We're obtaining them from the DHCP, so you can take OK here. If you're not sure if the CMOS clock on the computer is set to UTC, then select no here. But I select yes because I'm sure that mine is. I'm going to select Europe. In my case, it's Sweden. So I'm going to navigate to Sweden here. Okay. Perfect. Right now the question here is if we want to enable some things by default. The thing that is selected here, for example, this one might be important for you, is the SSH daemon. The SSH daemon allows us to connect remotely to our machine. By default, you cannot log in remotely as the administrator user root. This is for security reason. I'm going to show you later on how you can make root log into the system. So, for example, normal users are the only ones that can log in anyway with that, but we leave the options as they are here. Now it's asked if I want to add additional users for the system. I don't want to do it right now, I'm going to do it later, so I select no here. And here are the final configurations we can make, because the installation is finished. So if we just take exit, we apply all the configuration and exit the installer. So I select just OK here to exit. The installation is now finished, and I can select yes here if I want to reboot the system now. No, sorry, it says if I want to open a shell, then I can select yes, but I don't want to do it, so I just want to reboot the machine. Here is the reboot question. Sorry for mixing that up. So I just reboot there. And now after the installation, FreeBSD is now booting from the hard disk drive that we've been installing it on our system. And that's everything you need to do just to install it. Very simple with automatic partitioning. And there we have the system booted. FreeBSD is successfully installed on this machine. The next video will be exactly the same, except that we will partition the hard disk drive manually to illustrate how that works. If you don't want to partition manually, you can just skip the next video and to check the other video where we take a tour in FreeBSD and see how we can navigate around a bit.